In the previous lecture, we discussed how to write a good research report. So in this video lecture, we will discuss few more points that will improve your writing skills. So the first thing that is there is a research project should be written formally. This means that all opinions of the researchers are invalid and should not be included in the report with the exception of the recommendations subheading in chapter 5. So formal writing or scientific writing is limited by following points. The first one is there should be no references made to the writer or the researcher. Do not use personal pronouns. Avoid using adverbs. Always write in third person. The report is primarily written in past tense, except for the proposals which are written in future tense. And there should be no direct identification of persons involved as subjects. Then there are two important steps after report writing. The first one is the checking and proofreading. Always ask someone else to read through your thesis to check the general formatting and presentation. This can be very useful for picking up errors you have missed. And if you have been closely involved for a long time in the writing of your thesis or dissertation, usually it will be very difficult on your own to detect all the typing errors, misspellings and grammatical errors in it. After that, the next comes the plagiarism check. So first thing is, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is the unethical practice of using words or ideas of another author or researcher or your own previous works without proper acknowledgement. So if you quote or paraphrase another author's work without including a reference to it, you are plagiarizing. Plagiarism is the unethical practice of using words or ideas of others or your own, and it is considered as a serious academic and intellectual offense. Plagiarism can result in highly negative consequences such as paper retraction and loss of author credibility and reputation. Not only is it very easy to detect plagiarism using online services like Turnitin or Authenticate, but it is also very easy for us to spot it just by reading your work. So plagiarism does not only mean cheating, it is mainly used to describe forgetting or not realizing to include a reference to others' work or theories. There are different types of plagiarism. First one is copying and pasting word to word from others' work. Replacing just a few words from a statement and passing it off as paraphrasing. Recycling your own work without citing yourself. Incomplete or inadequate citations, or citing sources that are not real. Now the question arises, how much of a thesis can be plagiarized? The short answer is that ideally none of it should be plagiarized. When it comes to thesis, they are strictly scrutinized for plagiarism. You may sometimes end up writing some similar sentences to those present in other academic papers, and your teacher or lecturer may ignore these. However, if this is a recurring problem, you might be given a penalty. Therefore, I recommend you to use an online tool that can remove plagiarism before you submit your work. In our institute, we use Turnitin to check the plagiarism. And these are the guidelines which are followed in our institute. First are the exclusion of materials while checking plagiarism. So these points or these things, these are excluded while checking the plagiarism. Which are those? First one is all quoted work reproduced will require necessary permission or attribution from the journal or author. So if something is in quotations marks, then that is excluded from the plagiarism check. All the references, bibliography, table of content, preface and acknowledgements. All generic terms, laws, stranded symbols and standard equations are not considered as plagiarized. matches up to 11 consecutive words. So in our college, so we have formed the guidelines that if the match is up to 11 consecutive words, then it is not considered as plagiarized. But if more than 11 words come together, then it would come under the plagiarism. All the materials, figures, images and tables which is referred or cited from the original source. So if you have taken some images or tables, you must give the citation in original text and they should be referred in the reference list. Materials are published by student or supervisor from their own thesis or dissertation, self-publication or duplication is excluded. And last is the standard experimental and theoretical methods. They are also excluded material while checking plagiarism. And what percentage we take as reasonable duplication? That is in Introduction and Literature Review chapter, up to 25% is accepted, and in remaining portion of your thesis only up to 10% of duplication is acceptable. So for every B.Tech project, MSc, M.Tech dissertation and PhD thesis, the institute will follow this criteria, and at the time of submission, the report obtained from Turnitin is to be attached with the thesis or dissertation and should be verified by the supervisor. Then comes, what are the ways to avoid plagiarism? So there are 4 ways. First one is the cite and references. So every time you quote or paraphrase, you must include an in-text citation that identifies the original author. It often also includes the publication year and a page number. So each in-text citation must correspond to a full reference in the reference list or bibliography at the end of your paper. This details exactly where the information came from and allowing your readers to locate the source for themselves. Then comes the quoting and paraphrasing. Quoting means copying a piece of text word for word. The copied text must be introduced in your own words, enclosed in quotation marks and correctly attributed to the original author. And paraphrasing means using your own words to explain something from a source. So it allows you to give only the most important information from a passage. Now, third point is citing your own material. If some of the material you are using for your research paper was used by you in your current class or a previous one or anywhere else, you must cite yourself. Treat the text the same as you would if someone else wrote it. It may sound odd, but using material you have used before is called self-plagiarism, and it is also not acceptable. And the fourth thing that you can do to avoid plagiarism is using a plagiarism checker. So most universities use plagiarism checkers to detect plagiarism in student papers. This technology scans your document, compares it to a huge database of publications and websites, and highlights passages that are overly similar to other texts. You can use a plagiarism checker yourself before submitting your thesis or paper. This allows you to identify any parts where you have forgotten a citation, left out quotation marks, or included a paraphrase that's too close to the original text. Then you can follow the steps to easily fix any instances of potential plagiarism. So this is all about the plagiarism. Next is, what is the difference between the writing a research paper or writing a thesis or dissertation? So these are the points to be kept in mind while writing a research paper. The format is almost same, but the length is very short in case of a research paper. And you have to keep in mind who reads the project report versus who reads your journal. So project reports tend to be read by people who have a particular interest in the project. Other people may read a project report if they are especially interested in the specific research questions investigated. But who reads the journal articles? Journal articles are published for a group of people who are much more diverse in their interests. The people who read a journal article tend to be much less interested in the specific participant populations and measuring instruments in the study, but much more interested in the extent to which the results will generalize to other populations and measuring instruments. So few journal readers will be interested enough to read through a detailed presentation of the results. What they want is an answer to the question, what is especially interesting or important about this research? If you are writing a paper that you hope to get published in a journal, write it with the type of reader in mind. Second point of difference is journal space is limited. So journal editors will appreciate it if you minimize the number of tables and figures. A paper for a journal should include only those tables and figures that communicate the main results of the study. Any readers who want to see your results in greater detail can contact you and request them. Third is use the format specified by the journal you are writing for. Journal editors want submitted papers to follow the journal's specified format for headings, tables, figures, equations, etc. So that information is available on each journal's website, usually in the form of a reference to a particular style manual. And next is look at the journal. So the best way to know whether your report is appropriate for a particular journal is to look at several issues of the journal. Notice the content, style, and length of the articles. If the content of your report seems appropriate for a particular journal, but the style or length is noticeably different, rewrite the report before submitting it to that journal. So, if we are writing the different types of report, you can see the difference. First point of difference is in expected length. In thesis or dissertation, it may be up to 50,000 words, but for journals, the expected length is 10 to 30 pages. Cover page that is included in both, in journals also for thesis. Then the table of content. In manuscript for journals, these are not required, but for thesis dissertation, yes, we expect a table of contents. Abstract. So brief abstract of 150 to 400 words is required for the manuscripts, but for thesis it may be up to 2 to 4 pages. Expected level of detail for methods information. So for research papers, usually only brief information is required, but for thesis or dissertation, considerable detail is expected, including extended review and discussion of methodological options. Expected level of detail for finding. In manuscript, reasonable detail expected, but concise and focused. But in thesis or dissertation, considerable detail expected, including extended review and discussion. Separate literature review. No, for research papers. So for manuscripts for journals, literature briefly reviewed in the introduction section. But for thesis or dissertation, a separate chapter is required. Text divided into chapters. For research papers, no, it is not divided into chapters, but only in sections. And in thesis, yes, it is divided into chapters. And last point is option to include appendices. No, not for manuscript for journals, but yes, we can include the appendices in thesis or dissertation. So I think these points will help you for writing an effective research paper or thesis or dissertation. Thank you.